Hi, I'm Kristen Bell. Carvana makes car buying easy. Isn't that right, hun? Dax? Dax?
Sorry, did you know about this 7-day money-back guarantee?
A week to evaluate seat comfiness, you say?
A week of terrain tests? Yeah, I can test the brake pad resistance at variable speeds.
Make sure all the kids' stuff fits nicely.
Make sure our stuff fits nicely.
Oh,
Right. Still need to buy the car. Getting ahead of ourselves here.
Buy your car with Carvana today.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Business. How can you free up your team from time-consuming office tasks? Amazon Business empowers leaders to not only streamline purchasing, but better support their teams so they can focus on strategy and growth. Free up your teams and focus on your future. Learn more about the technology, insights, and support available at amazonbusiness.com.
This is Optimal Finance Daily, the 3 most important words in financial planning by Erik Carter of financialfinesse.com. According to an article by The Motley Fool, the 3 most important words when it comes to investing are the margin of safety. The article discusses how inaccurate people tend to be at making predictions about things like the economy, industry trends, and business growth. Since this unpredictability can wreak havoc on investment plans, many of the top investment experts recommend investing with a margin of safety, which is, quote, simply the distance between your predictions coming true and needing those predictions to come true. You can try to predict the future, but a margin of safety gives you room for error to be wrong, end quote. In other words, rather than pick the investment that needs to grow at 10% per year to pay off, pick the one that could grow at 10%, but would still be a good investment if it only grew at 5% with anything else being gravy on top. This is not only a good rule when it comes to investing, but to financial planning in general. For example, a margin of safety is essentially the whole idea of having emergency savings. They provide a buffer from going into debt or not being able to make your mortgage or car payments when your spending plans don't go exactly as planned. The traditional recommendation is to have at least 3 to 6 months worth of necessary expense in an emergency fund, but some experts have increased that to 9 to 12 months because of the weak economy and high unemployment rate. The same is true of insurance and estate planning. Make sure you're adequately insured and have documents like a healthcare directive and power of attorney in place. Otherwise, you're betting you and your family's well-being that nothing will ever happen to you. I don't know about you, but that's not a bet I would be willing to take. It's also vital to have a margin of safety in your retirement planning. Entering numbers into a retirement calculator that are overly optimistic will produce a case of the old garbage in, garbage out, and by encouraging a false sense of security, can actually be worse than not running a calculation at all. Here are some inputs that you'll want to have a margin of safety for. Retirement expenses. When doing retirement projections, you want to aim for a retirement income that's a bit higher than you think you'll need. For one thing, tax rates are likely to be higher given the rising national debt and cost of entitlement programs. At the very least, you'll also probably need to spend more than you do now on healthcare. A recent Fidelity study estimated that a 65-year-old couple retiring today will need about $220,000 to cover healthcare costs through their lifetime. That doesn't even factor in long-term care costs or future cuts in Medicare that will likely be needed to keep the program solvent. Yet a survey showed that about half of pre-retirees expect to only need $50,000 to cover healthcare costs in retirement. Social Security. Don't assume you'll get the full amount listed on your statement. Starting in about 20 years, Social Security is projected to only be able to pay 75 to 80% of expected benefits, so assume you'll get no more than 75% of what's promised. If the politicians exempt current beneficiaries from cuts as expected, the reduction could be even greater for younger people. The same goes for higher income people, as there has been talk of exempting lower income people from cuts as well. Life expectancy. You also don't want to assume an average life expectancy. After all, there's at least a 50% chance that you'll live past average, and that doesn't even factor in rising life expectancies due to improving medical technologies. If you do live past your assumed life expectancy, you could run out of money in retirement. On the other hand, if you don't live that long, it just means leaving a larger inheritance for your heirs. To be on the safe side, you might want to plan to live to 90, 95, or even 100. Inflation. Official inflation rates are currently only about 2%, but there are a couple of reasons you'll want to assume a higher inflation rate. First, many people argue that changes to the methodology used to measure inflation are underestimating the real increase in the cost of living. Second, inflation rates could rise if the government tries to inflate itself out of the growing national debt and entitlement obligations, as governments have typically done in the past. Investment rates of return. Whenever you're saving for any goal, you want to be conservative with your assumed rates of return too. This is especially true because historical returns are largely from time periods when bonds were paying much higher interest rates, and both stocks and bonds were boosted by falling interest rates. With rates expected to rise, stocks and bonds could both be facing strong headwinds. Some investment experts even talk about the new normal, in which stock returns could average only 4 to 5% going forward, as opposed to the 7% historical real returns written about in Jeremy Seigel's famous books, Stocks for the Long Run. Putting all this together means you'll need to save more. If things turn out better than expected, you'll be able to retire sooner or with a larger income. But that's why no one ever complained about saving too much. But if not, you'll be glad you chose to be safe rather than sorry. You just listened to the post titled, "The 3 Most Important Words in Financial Planning" by Erik Carter of financialfinesse.com. The origins of this podcast were once just a dream. That dream turned into the podcast and business you're listening to today. Starting your own business is a dream lots of us share, but too many of us let it remain just a dream. Don't hold yourself back thinking, what if I don't have the skills? What if I can't do it alone? Turn those what ifs into why nots with Shopify by your side. Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide and handles 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel to brands just getting started. Build campaigns that reach customers wherever they're scrolling. Plus, Shopify's expertise covers everything: inventory, shipping, returns, and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn those dreams into and give them the best shot at success with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/OFD. Go to shopify.com/OFD. Shopify.com/OFD. This message is brought to you by Apple Card. Apple Card is a no-fee credit card that gives you daily cash back every day. That's 3% back at Apple and 2% back on every purchase made with Apple Card using Apple Pay. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on your iPhone today. Subject to credit approval. Variable APRs for Apple Card range from 18.24% to 28.49% based on creditworthiness. Rates as of January 1st, 2025. Apple Card issued by Goldman Sachs Bank, USA, Salt Lake City branch. Terms and more at applecard.com. The more I evaluate the role of money in my life, the more I come to realize that it's only as valuable as my clarity on how I'm going to use it and my comfort level of how much is enough. Margin of safety is all about making sure we have enough and recognizing that what we think is enough is based on a lot of assumptions. We can't anticipate every future financial need, so it's beneficial to pad our numbers to some extent and to think through backup plans. But we should also be mindful of taking it too far and becoming overly pessimistic about the future. I know lots of people with a much higher net worth than me, but a much lower level of comfort when it comes to using that money to explore more freedom in their lives. To me, that's where this paradox of money becomes really apparent. We're all chasing more money for the options that financial freedom opens up. But if we never get to a place where we truly feel we have enough money, where we can explore different ways of using our time and energy, then what's the point? That should do it for another edition of Optimal Finance Daily. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you on the Wednesday show tomorrow, where your optimal life awaits.